box, which is nice. Post box. Post box. I got it in the mail. Hello everybody, I'm Michelle. I'm one of the 2 mythical unicorns here on this channel. And welcome back to us and everyone else. We always seem to drop off during the summer, so we're back again, I guess. And I thought it was only fair, because our last video was my summer TBR, that we wrap that whole story up with a summer wrap up. Did I read the books I said I was going to read on that TBR? Mostly no, which is why I don't typically do TBRs. I also recently redid my bookshelves, so I really couldn't deal with retrieving them all and climbing around on my sofa to reach the top shelf. So we're gonna have to deal with just putting the books on the screen so you know what book I'm talking about. So what books did I read then? I figured we'd start with nonfiction, which I really got into over the summer. I don't know if it is the fact that I am a uni student and then not reading anything factual at all made me feel really weird, possibly. So I read about 5 nonfictions over the summer. All of them, I think, yeah, all of them in audiobook form, which I quite enjoy. So let's start it off with Stop Reading the News by Rolf Dobelli. Rolf Dobelli. I'm fairly certain he was either German or Swiss. I'm going to put it on the screen. It's what it says on the tin. This is a book that encourages you to stop reading the news cycle. So he in particular is talking about the 24-hour news cycle that is always going on and sort of spews out incorrect information and just stresses you out mostly. And as a media and communications major, this was really interesting, just to see another person's perspective on all of that. And if you are in the middle of one of those like binging the news, I would suggest trying to read this. It was quite a short audiobook. I think it was an article first that he then expanded on into a book. I could recommend the audiobook. I quite liked it. It was well done. It's not read by the author because he's not a native English speaker, so that's that. But yeah, it's a short book and it goes straight to the point and it was really good. The next one I'm going to talk about is Trick Mirror by Gia Tolentino. This is a collection of essays ranging in different topics and I really enjoyed it. I liked it. I've heard sort of mixed reviews on this one, where people think that the first essay is the best one and then it sort of drops off and that they're too long and rambly, and they might be. I'm not a massive essay reader outside of university, so I don't actually know, but I really liked it. She goes on long tangents and things like that, which I understand will annoy a lot of people, but I actually really enjoyed her writing style and her like sort of searching. It's almost like she's in the woods and not entirely sure where she's gonna end up and just sort of hopes for the best. I really liked it. I really like her perspective and her thoughts on things, and I thought the essays were well written and she discussed interesting topics. So if you are interested in getting into essay collections, I think this is a really good one. She also reads her own book for the audiobook, which I always quite enjoy. So yeah. Next up is Jonathan Safran Foer's We Are the Weather. I was not entirely certain I was going to like this. I tend to have issues with people writing about the climate crisis and whose fault it is and yada yada. However, Jonathan Safran Foer is the kind of person who looks at himself and sees his own fault in things. So he isn't like complaining and pointing fingers at whose fault it is. He's also looking to himself and seeing his own shortcomings and failings, and he's sort of looking at what would be optimal and what is possible, like what can you do. And I really liked this book. I thought it was really, really good. The climate crisis can be triggering and really stressful to read about, anxiety inducing, you know, all the fun things. So it's like if you are a person who is getting stressed about it, I don't know if this is the book to read. What I will say is that he's not one of these hopeless people who's like, we're all gonna die, it's all over. It's rather like he's pointing out the facts and saying like, this is what you can do. So if you're sort of ready to take in that kind of information, I would totally suggest you read this book. It's really good. And once again, he reads his own audiobook, which I always think is a plus, and he does it very well. My next nonfiction is a reread, because as you'll notice in my fictions bit later, I was on a bit of a reread kick. So I decided to, I guess, re-listen to Neil Gaiman's The View from the Cheap Seats. That was really difficult for me to say, I apologize. This is sort of a collection of different non-fiction that Neil Gaiman has written. It can be like, there's speeches, there's some articles, there's like introductions to other writers and things. I just find, and once again, Neil Gaiman reads it himself. I love listening to Neil Gaiman read things. Sounds weird, but it's totally true. Every audiobook of his that I've purchased have always been read by him, because I quite enjoy his way of reading. I really like this collection of writings, because it's not essays mostly, it's different pieces of nonfiction that he's written over the years that they've just sort of collected into this one book that I really like. And it's well written. Some are creepy, as it is, you know, Neil Gaiman. I was also introduced into authors that I've never heard of, because Neil Gaiman reads a variety of authors, it would seem, and the introductions that he's written into some of the books in this book sounds weird, but it's true, actually made me read other authors, so that's fun. But yeah, this is one of my favorite nonfiction books. So if you want to listen to some nonfiction, that's also a good one. The last one in the nonfiction was actually on my TBR, and I think I'd heard the first chapter when I recorded my summer TBR. It is now on my favorite shelf. It's right there. I have a signed copy because I'm ridiculous, and John Green is fantastic. So I read The Anthropocene Reviewed by John Green, and it was fucking incredible. He's outdone himself. If you like the way that John Green writes, you will love The Anthropocene Reviewed. There are these essays about random topics that he thinks are interesting, and then he always gives you a piece of life advice in some way, and he tells you a personal story that is somehow attached to the random piece of trivia that he starts off with, and it's so well done, and there's so much hope, and there's so much like care in those pages, and that is going to be a book that I continuously return to and read passages and reread essays. As I said, I listened to the audiobook, which is read by John Green, which is fantastic. It's really well done. If you listen to the audiobook, it's almost like a podcast, which it was originally. The Anthropocene Reviewed was originally a podcast done by John that then turned into a book. And obviously I loved this book so much that I had to get a physical signed copy. So one of my new all-time favorite books. Incredible. So now we're moving on to fiction. I'm gonna start off with the books that I said I was hoping to read. So I did read Strange Beasts of China by Yan Jie, which is a Chinese writer. And it took me a good while to get through. And I don't think that's the book's fault in particular. It was just, I was on a real nonfiction kick this summer and found it difficult to get through fiction for some reason. Don't really know why, but it's the truth. I really liked this book, actually. It was interesting. It was quite gruesome in some ways. It was surprising. It did not go in the direction I thought it was going to, and it really, it surprised me. It was very good. It was very well written. I liked the setup. I liked how it was laid out, because each chapter in this book concentrates on a different type of beast, which is, well, further explained in the book itself. I would recommend this if you can handle some sadness and some gruesomeness and some really surprising things. I can't really explain it. It's a very good book. It was very, surprising is the only thing that I can think of. It did not do what I thought it was going to do, but in a good way. So yes, that's Strange Beast of China. The other book that I said I was hoping to read in the TBR that I actually read, and this is a reread, is Aristotle and Dante Discovered the Secrets of the Universe. Do I still love it? Absolutely. Do I see faults in it that I maybe didn't see when I first read it? Absolutely. But that's what happened. Like, that's generally what happens with YA, at least for me. I still love it. I still think it's a cozy, fantastic, well-written, very good book with interesting characters and relationships and just all of the good things of a coming-of-age novel. I love this book so much. I'm excited for the sequel. I'm also very scared about the sequel because I don't usually like them. And it's gonna be difficult to follow this book up in particular. But I'm also the kind of person that's like, if I don't like the second one, I can just sort of disregard it and be like, that didn't happen. So it should be fine. Now, the rest of the books on this wrap up was not on my TBR. These are all rereads. I needed the comfort. Let's just be honest. I had trouble getting, as I said, I had trouble getting through fiction, and I just needed books that I knew I would love. So, I reread The Perks of Being a Wallflower by Stephen Chbosky. And oh my god, does this book hold up. It's so freaking good. If you don't like Charlie, I don't know what's wrong with you. This book is still as good as when I first read it when I was about 18 or 19. It's so well done. It's so good. And those characters, man. Those characters. The next one is a classic. The Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald. The last time I read this, I read it for school. Not in the current educational, like not at my current university course, but a few years back. And I started to hate it because we studied it. And it was like, it was too much. There was just too much reading into things that I was like, this is ridiculous. So rereading it was nice for just like entertainment purposes and being like, look at these ridiculous rich people. and like the American dream is bullshit and all of the good things, you know. I do really like The Great Gatsby. It is very good. Surprise, surprise. It's a classic for a reason, Michelle. Shut up. The next reread I did was The Crane Wife by Patrick Ness, because Patrick Ness is one of my all-time favorite writers. I really like his writing. I think it's incredible. And I've only read The Crane Wife once when it first came out, I believe. So I was 21 possibly. So it's been about 7 years. And this is kind of more in the adults genre. And I hadn't read much of that when I first read this book. So I wanted to reread it and see like how I feel about it now. And honestly, it's even better. Because this can sort of be placed into magical realism sort of territory, which if you have been watching our channel lately, well, not lately because we haven't uploaded in a couple of months. If you watched our channel at all, you'll know that I do love a bit of magical realism, and this sort of fits into that category. So yeah, it's very, very good. I really, really like it. Still, it's fantastic. And the last reread that I did was I Am the Messenger by Marcus Zusak. This is one of my all-time favorite books. It remains as that. I don't know how many times I've reread it since I bought it when I was 20, but it's now been 8 years and I've at least reread it once a year, I think. And it's still fantastic. This is one of those comfort books to me. I know it inside out. I love it so much. If you haven't read it, I do strongly suggest that you do. Now, this last little section is books that I've started, but I haven't finished yet. So it's a weird little mixture of books that I just, started but didn't finish yet. But I will. I'm reading them all at the moment. The first one is a book that I got from one of my best friends, which is called The Boy Who Spoke Snakish, I think is probably how you pronounce that. Oh goodness, his name, the author is Andrus Kivirak? Kivirak. I am sorry, I hope he doesn't watch this. The author is Estonian, so is my friend. This is, I think, a bit of a modern classic in Estonia. And we spoke about it a couple of months ago, and then it showed up in my postbox, which is nice. Postbox. I got it in the mail. And I'm sort of slowly making my way through it and trying to read it with care and things, all of the good things. It's a really strange book and I really like it. I don't really know how to explain it. It centers a boy who can speak sort of an ancient language, which is snakish. So he can communicate with snakes, for instance. And he's one of the few people who still live in the woods, whereas there is civilization. And I think it might be about colonization. I haven't gotten that far yet, so I don't know if that is like the themes of it yet. But it kind of feels like it. And it's really interesting so far. I haven't gotten very far, but I really like it so far. Then we have another nonfiction, which is Crying in H Mark by Michelle Sonner. This has been everywhere since about last spring, I think. And I was finally like, okay, I'll read it. It sounds interesting. It centers around food and family and a lot of sadness. But that's okay. I really like it so far. I haven't gone very far. I am listening to the audiobook, which is read by the author, which I always love. So yes, I think I'm on about chapter 3 or 4. So it's not that sad just yet. I'm just waiting for that turn of events at the moment. It'll be fine, hopefully. The next I'm currently reading is The Graveyard Book by Neil Gaiman. And I listened to the first chapter and realized that this was more of an autumn book, so I didn't want to read it during the summer. So I'm just sort of waiting for the weather to get colder and then I'll really get into this one. I don't know why I tried to read a Neil Gaiman during the summer. Neil Gaiman is not a summer author for me. Do you do this? Is this just me? Please tell me that there are other people who are like, no, this person, this particular author is more like a autumn winter author. Please tell me. Let me know. The next one that I've read the first chapter of is Up Here, and it's The Lonely Castle in the Mirror by Mizuki Tsuyimura, Japanese author. I'm really liking it so far. It seems strange and fantastical and fantasy-like and kind of coming of age and all of the good things so far. As I said, I've read the first chapters. I'm not gotten very far, so I don't want to say too much about it just yet. I'm really liking it so far. I like the writing style. I like the ideas and the themes so far. So I think this might become a new favorite. Very early days of saying that, but I still think it might be. The last one that I'm reading is kind of a random one, which is Damien by Herman Hesse. Why am I reading this? Because I seem to have gotten into a weird mindset of reading books that Kim Namjoon from BTS has recommended. And Damien is on that list. And I'm currently reading it. And I wanted a classic. But I don't read too many classics, like too much of it. So I wanted like an easier one. And this seemed to be one of those. So those are all the books that I have read during the summer and that I've started but haven't finished. Those should be on my TBR for autumn, but we'll see about that. I don't know if I'm gonna do more TBRs because I'm actually terrible at them. I like creating them. I like curating them together, but I'm such a mood reader that I'll never stick to them. That's the end of the video. Let me know what you've been reading over the summer. Can you make TBRs and stick to them? And also, how do you do that if that is how you read? That sounds so interesting. Like, can you just create a list and be like, so I'm just gonna tick them off and like read through all of these? That's so interesting. Yeah, let me know if you can make TBRs and stick to them and how you do that. Until next time, bye.